It's my one life, and I give it everything I got. I am music. I am sports. I am the culture. Here's a quick news break with yours truly. I'm the one and only. I go by the name of Mr. TALIAFERRO. Please make sure you're following your boy on Instagram, and it's at Mr. TALIAFERRO. So a lot is going on into the podcast world, and I am watching every bit of it from my own negotiations. Though I don't necessarily consider myself a podcast, I do have a platform, and let's be clear, I am watching how some of these corporations treat black people. That is the reality of the situation. I am watching closely because when my time comes to strike a deal, and boy is my time coming, I want to see what's out there, what's available, who's getting treated right, who's getting treated wrong. And to me, that ship in our community has started with the Joe Budden podcast. You know, that is my go-to podcast. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't consume a lot of podcasts just because I don't like getting other people's thoughts in my thoughts. So I try to limit the amount of other people's perspectives to a bare minimum, so I don't let them frame my thoughts, my ideologies, my commentary when I decide to give them to you guys. So I try not to listen to a lot of media outside of self and reporting, right? But boy, do I love the Joe Budden podcast. That is my favorite podcast out there. You know, say what you want about Joe Budden. He knows how to create a good product. He did it with Everyday Struggle, with academics. To me, I like to pull up, and I dang sure love that Joe Budden podcast 2 times a week. Count me in. Thursday morning, or Wednesday morning, Saturday morning. I can't miss it. I cannot miss that podcast 2 times a week. And I can't explain to you what it is about the podcast that keeps me coming back, but I just like it. Matter of fact, I love it. All right. Joe and the crew, they've been over with Spotify for the last 2 years. That was a big deal. You know, I can't believe it's been 2 years already, but it was a big deal when they opted to take their talents to Spotify for an exclusive deal, which essentially meant Spotify had exclusive rights to the Joe Budden podcast. That bad boy would still drop a couple days later on YouTube, but Spotify got first dibs on the Joe Budden podcast. It's been that way for 2 years. Their deal is coming to an end. You know, Spotify has been in the news. They've been making some big plays with some big time fixtures. We saw that they've given Bill Simmons' podcast reportedly $250 million. The Ringer has got the bag. They've given Michelle Obama the bag for a new podcast that she's bringing exclusively to their brand and their company. And obviously the biggest of them all, Joe Rogan, has a deal coming to Spotify really, really soon. Exclusively, that podcast will be there. So with all these big time players getting these deals, one would believe that Joe Budden would somehow, some way cash out, that the Joe Budden podcast, the JBP, would get a nice little deal as everybody else is getting paid right now. One would believe that, but that apparently is not the case. On the last episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe took a lot of time to discuss the inner workings of what's going on between him and his negotiations with Spotify. And he let it be known that as of September 23rd, the Joe Budden podcast will no longer exclusively be on Spotify. Check a little bit of it out.
See, and that's the problem with these fucking DSPs. I come from music, fam. Some of these rules that y'all are trying to put into effect, it's an old game. It's an old game. I come from music, which means I've been robbed and scammed for 18 years of my career in a game that I had no say-so on the rules that were being put in place. Podcasting, not so much, buddy. This is new ground. All you niggas is new here. Spotify, my contract with y'all, I helped design it. Y'all didn't know. There's an entire ecosystem here that you have to respect.
Have to.
If you're looking to feed the soil. See, everybody's not looking to feed the soil. Some are just looking to take the fruit.
Right.
What 7 episodes left means is that September 23rd, this podcast, new episodes of this podcast will no longer be available on Spotify exclusively. September 23rd, I cannot tell you where this podcast will be. But as it stands, I can tell you where it will not be, and that is Spotify.
Again, just for clarity, the last exclusive date of the Joe Budden podcast on Spotify will be September 23rd. Joe, in a statement that he gave to Variety, said, "I cannot tell you where this podcast will be, but as it stands, I can tell you where it will not be, and that is Spotify." Spotify also released a statement after Joe's podcast. They said it was our desire to keep Joe Budden on Spotify. As Joe referenced on his show, we made him a considerable offer. One that was significantly larger, and many times the value of the existing agreement and reflective of the current market and size of his audience. Unfortunately, we could not come to terms, and we respect his wishes to find a new home for his show. Again, that was a Spotify spokesperson delivering that statement following Joe's rant on his podcast the other day. So I do have some opinions and thoughts, but before I do that, I would like to play Charlamagne of The Breakfast Club, who just yesterday, as Angela Yee reported on in the Rumor Report, that Joe will be leaving Spotify. I want you to play a little bit of what Charlamagne had to say on Joe and the crew no longer being exclusively with Spotify. Just check it out a little bit, and then we'll come back, and then the next voice you'll hear and the next commentary will be of your boy, Mr. TALIAFERRO.
It sounds to me like Joe Budden is a person who knows his worth, but doesn't know how to properly negotiate it. Because if you keep doing deals with various corporations and you keep getting trash ass deals, that's on you. Like things like vacation days, bonuses, all of that has to be negotiated in your contract from the beginning.
Shouldn't that be as manager or as an agent or as an attorney? You know, shouldn't they be looking out for his best interest, especially somebody who's done this rodeo before that knows that? I mean, I know my attorney has been through this before, so she's helped a lot. And, you know, shouldn't it be that? Like, you know, there's certain things that I might not know to ask for, but that's what I pay her for, right?
Yeah, and also, too, when I hear, when I heard Joe, like, comparing his show to, like, you know, Spotify signing Gimlet for hundreds of millions and The Ringer for hundreds of millions and Paracaps for hundreds of millions. I think it's very important to note that they got that money from Spotify because they are actual networks with tons of IP. Those networks have a bunch of shows and other content, a bunch of staff that knows how to make those shows. You can't compare your one show to a whole network.
So I do have opinions. Actually, I have a lot of them, right? First off, let me give the credit to Joe Budden. Like I said earlier, say what you want about him. The brother know how to create a good product. He just does. He know how to create good content. But what we're noticing is Joe's creating this good content, but not able to keep the content in certain places, right? He's moving around a lot. And unfortunately for content and podcasts, and especially in the urban community, I hate using the word urban, but in our community, there are not a lot of places to go. And he's already burnt bridges with Complex and Spotify, right? I don't like when people speak highly of their employer or their partner, whoever they're in a deal with, and then when things end salty because your situation ain't work out right now, I ain't like them from the beginning. I can't stand that, right? Because you done had your big fan base come over for the last couple of years. Some people have paid for subscriptions with Spotify just to listen to your podcast. We ain't never heard a complaint from you until your deal went left, right? And I know people change and I know things happen, but you know, I don't like how Joe went about it. I didn't like the podcast. You know, that's one of the ones I did not like. I didn't like, you know, I feel like Joe, first off, he didn't allow his co-hosts to give their thoughts and opinions on what's going on right now, as they do have some type of say so in everything, I would tend to believe. I didn't like how Joe communicated his thoughts on the Spotify deal. To me, if I'm reading them correctly, it sounds like Joe, he didn't want to give up his exclusive rights, right? Or he didn't want to sign over any type of rights to Joe, anything Rory, or anything Maul, or anybody else over there. So he was like, nah, I do believe there's a deal to be had, probably around the same number that they were already at, without signing over their exclusive rights, right? Like, I do believe there is a deal to be had, but Joe probably, if I'm reading, because if you're a fan of the Joe Budden podcast, and I am a fan of the podcast, you know how erratic Joe can be at times, and sometimes he talks over everyone, right? So if that is to be true, I'm assuming it's not easy doing contract negotiations with Joe Budden. That's my assumption. I don't know that to be true. I've never met Joe, but I can see how Probably ain't the easiest to do contract negotiations. Joe needs a lawyer doing his contract negotiations. He don't need to be in the room. He could be in a room, but he don't need to be the one doing the primary communication because he's too emotional. And I think that maybe got in the way of the better business decision. To me, the better business decision would have been to probably stay on Spotify and to another deal approach. I don't know if Joe, he said, he don't know where the podcast is going to be, but he knew it wouldn't be on Spotify. I'm thinking they're going back to YouTube and letting everybody have the rights to their podcast for the foreseeable future with no exclusivity for now, right? Because it's not a good time to sign a deal right now. The economy is, it's been the coronavirus year, right? So not a lot of money outside of Spotify is to be had. So I'm assuming they'll go just back to dropping their episodes on YouTube. And if that is the case, I kind of see what Charlamagne is saying. Like, the narrative seems to be Joe is Dame Dash in his bags. He is the dude walking in the room saying all or nothing. And if you've ever been in a contract negotiation, a lot of times it's not all or nothing. You got to give a little bit. You got to bend a little bit. You got to make things work the best way you can, right? Just because the deal didn't work out exactly how you wanted, does that mean you don't take anything? I didn't do that. I just did a deal with the NBA and BBTV. There are things that I like about my deal, some that I don't like, but it was a negotiation, right? Like that's the truth of the matter. Like it just is what it is. Especially in a market like this, what it is right now. I thought Joe came across really bad in that interview. I think the goal was to be transparent and let the fans know what's going on. But when I listened to it, all I could think about is like how bad Joe is in a contract negotiation. If you listen to the Joe podcast on the Spotify deal, let me know what you think about it in the comment box below. I'm going to continue to watch the Joe Budden podcast, whether they go back to YouTube, wherever. And by the way, them views on YouTube, when they come back, like dropping the day of the new episodes, gonna be through the roof. And I do believe at some point Joe and them will get a great deal. They deserve it. They're leading our culture in that regard, and I can't wait till that day happens. But we have to tell the truth. I know I like the podcast just like how you do. The truth of the matter is, this does seem like the second time Joe has wanted to go all or nothing, and it looks like he's cost himself 2 big time bags. We'll see what happens. Y'all let me know in the comment box below. Do you agree with what Charlamagne said about Joe Budden? And it does seem like Charlamagne's got a little bit of hatred towards Joe's business. Every time Joe Budden comes up, I feel a little bit of saltiness from Charlamagne, but I do think he made a good point on Joe Budden. Let me know what you think in the comment box below. I'm out.